Recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much. I've been listening with interest to this conversation between Dr. Burgess and Dr. Francis, and it seems to me that for physicians, when you have the Attorney General of the state or when you have vigilante justice, which some of these states now are encouraging, I think Dr. Resnick and all the rest of our witnesses have been very clear. This post-Roe world is just a reality that's frightening both for physicians and, frankly, for pregnant women and for those who love them. The New York Times, just within the last few days, outlined numerous examples of women being turned away from hospitals in times of medical need, such as miscarriages, life-threatening pregnancy complications. And these are pregnancies that are very much wanted. And we've had this case in New Hampshire with a recent ban signed by our governor, a woman who I know actually well who was carrying twins. One of the twins could not survive. And she had to go to the state legislature to get an exception so that she could complete her pregnancy. This is a reality where doctors are unable to respond to patients that are in intense pain. They're being told to go leave the emergency room and not come back until they're bleeding excessively. We know about the risk of infection. And for anyone who might be watching this hearing and would prefer that members of Congress were not having to delve this far into the medicine of what is a private, personal life of women, I would very much prefer not to be having this conversation as well. I don't think politicians are well suited to be making decisions about the life and well-being of their physicians' patients. I was an adoption attorney for 25 years, so I know more than most about what pregnant people and women go through. And I've worked with hundreds of women making a difficult and private and personal decision. But not one of these women wanted the government to make that decision for them. Dr. Guerrero, according to your testimony, your organization is committed to providing unbiased, judgment-free support to people during their pregnancy experiences. Taking pregnancy decisions away from women and putting them in the hands of politicians hinders that critical work. Could you speak to why it's important for women to get information related to their pregnancy options and the potential outcomes?
Absolutely. And I want to just focus a little bit more on something that Dr. Resnick brought up, which is that aside from these extraordinary circumstances, what we see from everyday people who are just struggling to get by and are just trying to make the best decisions for themselves and their families and their communities is that I'm very, very worried about the mental health of pregnant people. It was already very difficult to work with people who were struggling with such immense feelings and experiences and trying to access basic health care, and now that has been ratcheted up. The fact that it's been so shamed and stigmatized in this country was already a huge barrier in terms of mental health for the average person trying to seek care. And now with that inaccessibility, we're seeing people who are really suffering. They're really suffering with just trying to make the best decision they can. And we trust our clients to make the best decision that they can, no matter what they decide to do in their pregnancy experiences, because we actually think very highly of our clients. We think that they're really great, wonderful people who are trying to do the best that they can every day. And that's why this has been, it's just horribly offensive, doesn't even begin to cover it.
I feel the same way about the hundreds of birth mothers that I represented and the courage that they showed. Dr. Resnick, how does the patchwork of state laws restricting access to abortion impact providers' ability to provide other kinds of reproductive health care?
I mentioned in my opening statement that it actually goes beyond reproductive health care because of the number of medications that in some cases are viewed as getting caught up in these laws because they affect pregnancies, whether they're a teratogen, whether there's something that's used
I
for
understand
medical
there's
abortions.
immune compromise, cancer
Yeah.
medication that is
I
being
mean,
withheld.
I'm a dermatologist, but there are drugs that I use that if I lived in another state, I would be facing pharmacies that might not be willing to dispense them right now. I'm hearing from colleagues who are having that happen. So patients with lupus, patients with other, inflammatory bowel disease are finding barriers to getting their medications now because of these laws touching things way beyond just abortion.
Thank you, and with that, I yield back.
Chair now recognizes Mr. Long for 5